Welcome to Defending Our Children, everyone. Welcome, everyone, to Defending Our Children. We have with you today a UFC Hall of Famer. He's a fighter, he's a commentator, and much, much more, Pat Miletich. Pat, I want you to let people know a little bit more about your fighting background. Who are you, so that they can appreciate the perspective you're coming from.
Yeah, thanks first of all, Craig and Forrest. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you guys and what you're doing for children. Not just in this country but worldwide. So, my background is I grew up in Bettendorf, Iowa. Grew up, with the aspirations of being a world champion freestyle wrestler, an Olympic champion, a great football player. Bettendorf, Iowa was a hotbed for athletics. In the state of Iowa, we were very dominant. Even in the hotbed of Iowa itself, as a wrestling powerhouse, our community was always, top three in the state. It's just everybody and all the boys wrestled, and the bad wrestlers went out for basketball. That's the type of place that I grew up, right? So as I developed, I was a good wrestler. I beat a lot of great wrestlers, was a very good football player, and all that good stuff. But I had a respiratory disease my entire childhood that, doctors couldn't figure out anything like that. And so it was only through educating myself and healing myself and my respiratory disease that I was able to win a world title. And then I used that knowledge of all the research that I did for many years to put those same organic ingredients into my athletes that made them, besides their great work ethic, because they were a lot former wrestlers, where they had the right components put into their body to where they could do superhuman things, so to speak, right? And so my process of building what I call X-Men, real life X-Men, started at a pretty early age. And I've kind of carried that forward now through everything, I guess, prepares us for certain points in our life where the fighting, the coaching, the broadcasting, all these different things, and all my research have kind of gotten me to this point now to where my focus is helping veterans and farm families who've been exposed to massive amounts of chemicals, children who are being exposed to massive amounts of chemicals in our environment, our water, our food, our air, our soil. Things have gotten to a point where it's very critical. We're at a tipping point, I think, certainly for Americans, if not humanity, with that. And so that's kind of what I focus on is I love children. I want to protect children. And my background and some of the things that have gone on in my life have kind of programmed me to be almost nuclear, over the top protective of children, which I don't know if that's even possible. But, let's put it this way. All the fathers in my community have all instructed their sons to tread very lightly with my daughters.
Well, I love that background and perspective, because having lived it personally and improved your own health and learned organically through that journey is a really powerful perspective and platform from which to share what you've learned. So I look forward to unpacking that and empowering our listeners with that knowledge, Pat. So I've known you for a while, have a personal appreciation for you and your heart for the children and for our country. And this is going to be a good conversation. So
yeah,
I would say, man, with all that's out there, where do you want to start, man? What do you think people need to hear? Where would you like to start unpacking this?
Well, I think, recognizing, through all the years of work that you've done, Craig, you've seen a lot of evil in your life and you recognize it, you see it. And a lot of people aren't exposed to that, I haven't been exposed to a lot of the stuff the massive amount of evil that exists, and you see it. You've seen it many, many years. And so most people just don't even know it exists, right? So to be able to combat a problem or an enemy, so to speak, you have to recognize it exists. And I think it's just important for people. And I'm sure that people tuning into this broadcast at least recognize it, but I don't know if they fully can understand and appreciate the level that's there. And, for me, the fact that my two oldest brothers, who were my literal heroes, committed suicide because they were abused as children by preachers, Catholic priests, that really, for me, magnified the level of evil that's out there. And to be honest with you, when you look at it, those priests were probably abused as children.
Yeah.
That's a lot of times the process that happens. And so I have to show some compassion, no matter how angry I am at what's happened in my family. I still have to show compassion for people and understand that hurt people hurt people.
My father always said that. And it's tragic to see how many who are harmed in their childhood, as was my father. His father was shot off of him when he was 5 years old. And I've heard it different ways, that one that he was beating him to death, and another one that he was smothering him with a pillow when my grandmother walked into the room. She returned home to find this. So my dad, if he had followed the norm, I guess you'd say, he would have been an abuser, but he made himself into the most righteous and selfless and giving human being I've ever met in my lifetime. And what a tremendous blessing to have him as a father. But like you're seeing, so many don't choose to overcome it and put a stop to it. They actually choose to perpetuate the harm. And man, for the life of me, Pat, I would love to find a way to guide people away from that pattern. Like if you've been subjected to abuse, I would love it if we could just cause people to go, look, that's what not to be. Do the opposite. Stop the chain of events. But
Yeah.
so many don't. What do you make of that?
Well, it's recognizing that generational abuse exists, right? So I recognize that, while my father was not a sexual abuser, he had a lot of demons. He had a lot of demons, and he was physically abusive. I have to, at the same time, say to myself, number one, thank you for making me realize I can shut off physical pain. When I'm in physical pain, I was able to do that, right? So that's certainly made me part of who I am and winning a world title, because there were times many times, of course, when there was a lot of pain in that process, and I'm able to shut it off for whatever reason through that experience. But understanding that my father was also, hurt, scared, there was a lot of programming that went into his process. So I think through becoming a world champion, subconsciously, I was readying myself in a way, physically at least, to where I could never be injured by anyone again, at least in my mind, right? To be as impenetrable as possible so that nobody could ever hurt me. And that was a self-protection type of thing that went on. But what also came with that was recognizing I never wanted my children to feel fear around me. Respect, yes, but not fear. And I want my kids to run to me when they're afraid, not away,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
to
man.
feel secure. All those things that go with that are super important. And so anybody out there that's been abused, people who have children or are thinking of having children, or even if you've been abusive in the past, understand that pain that you felt, that fear that you felt, and looking up at your parents or whoever was abusing you, and understanding that you can flip that completely and change your child's world completely by just saying, you know what, I'm never going to lay a hand on my child again. I'm never going to hurt them. I'm never going to say mean things to them, never demean them, always build them up. And that's something that with my daughters is, I say, especially now with my 9-year-old, I'm really focused on her, because my two oldest daughters are, you wouldn't believe how much these kids won't take any garbage off anybody. I mean, they certainly me, but they've been programmed to be kids that if there's something wrong going on or whatever it is, they will confront their teachers, their coaches, their professors, anyone, and they will literally stand there and instantly say, no, this is
You've
not
raised
right. And that's what I wanted for my kids. I wanted my kids to be able to stand up for themselves. And so my 9-year-old, it's when I talk to her, you know, what are we saying at night before we go to bed? I am powerful. I am beautiful. I am strong. I am intelligent. That positive programming constantly. First thing in the morning when you wake up, pray. Thank you, God, for another day. I am powerful. I am strong. I help weak people. All those things.
Yeah, beautiful, Pat. We appreciate that. We're going to tie into more of that on the other side of this quick break, everybody. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone, to Defending Our Children. We are on with world champion at UFC fighter and Hall of Famer, Pat Miletich. Pat was talking about positive programming for the children. My, how important is that in this day and age of chaos, mayhem, and division? So, Pat, please continue, sir.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, and my 9-year-old is, she's the kid that, the teachers are always saying, or the coaches are always saying, your daughter's incredible with, we've got a kid who doesn't have a whole lot of confidence. They're having trouble with, swim practice or this or that, whatever it is. Your daughter's always befriending what seems like to them the probably the weakest kid, or the kid that doesn't have any confidence, or the kid that's scared or just very timid. And there's your daughter talking to them, playing with them. That's what it's about ultimately,
Yeah.
is building other people up. It's where human nature is to see the weak one in the group. And a lot of times, especially as kids, we pick on those kids, right? We would just sense that weakness, and sharks, just like they smell blood in the water. And that's human tendency sometimes. And I think that's been programmed into us too much, instead of saying, you know what? I know you're afraid and you're having a tough time. And I'll give you an example. A guy who I respect a great deal. I don't need to necessarily talk about his name, but when he first came to my gym, he was scared. He was sitting in the corner watching practice, and he hadn't even got on the mat yet. And he looked at me and he said, I'm scared. And I said, I was scared too. First time I got on the mat, I was terrified. I didn't want people wrenching on me and doing all of this. I said, don't worry about it. I said, all these guys here are going to look out for you. They know you're new. They want to help you. They want to teach you. That guy ended up fighting in the UFC several times, and doing very good. And, that's where you can take someone from being terrified to a warrior that walks into a cage on pay-per-view television and becoming a man who's raising kids and instilling the same thing in his kids, right? That's
Yes.
what it's all about. Doesn't matter who it is. I truly feel that I can take the weakest person in the world, put the right nutrients and supplements in their body, created by God, not by laboratories, and teach them how to do certain things mechanically, and make them literally almost invincible in a couple of years.
Yeah. Well, that's what the strong do. They lift up those who are in need, the struggling, the weak. And while we also beat down the predators to put a stop to that. So, I agree with you 100%, Pat. Too many people, and I can think back of a couple of occasions in my childhood where I was ugly to another kid, and if I had it to do over again, I would have lifted them up, with the wisdom that we gain with maturity, and experience. But so many are inclined to beat down others when they can. And I would just submit to everybody, man, when you do lift somebody up, it feels good. It feels
Yeah,
good for a reason.
yeah,
That's how we're supposed to be. And
sure.
everything's a choice, right? So the more you choose what is supposed to be, what the creator designed us to be, man, and you're in that vibration or that frequency, however you want to describe it, when you're in that harmony with the creator's way, everything just feels better because you're doing what you're supposed to do, and everything just elevates and works better. So I
Yeah.
encourage everybody to
And,
try that.
and that's the thing is, it's, I think a lot of people have been programmed. There was a guy that walked the earth about 2,000 years ago, who was a lamb to the weak, right? He was very gentle with
Yep.
those, but the very powerful, the people that had powerful, he would deliberately embarrass them intellectually in front of a lot of their, peers, right?
Yeah.
He would deliberately outwit them and deliberately overpower them intellectually and spiritually. So I think, to those who are weak, we should be lambs. We should be gentle. But to those who are super powerful and abusive, we should be able to stand our ground and say, yeah, you know what? No, I'm not taking part in anything that you have to say, anything that you're telling me to do. I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah, Pat, I've made the same observations of that one guy. It seemed like he had some things figured out. And so much so that where I believe that if people would pay more attention to how that one guy walked and lived, we wouldn't be facing the chaos and disorder we're in right now.
Yeah, and that's what I say is, if I could just figure out how not to sin every day, I could be more like him.
Oh man, well, it's a development process, is it not? This life,
It
we
is. It
work
is.
on
And
ourselves. We learn from every decision, both good and bad.
yeah, you'll like this story. So my two oldest daughters swam their entire lives, pretty much. their entire childhoods from age 5 till senior or junior in high school. For a guy who was a former Navy SEAL, retired SEAL, spent 11 years, and he's a great guy. He's a very good friend, hard-headed guy like me. We butted heads now and then, but for the most part, very, very hard on kids, but he did it out of love. All the swim moms cried numerous times because of the way he was stern and the way he pushed kids, right? It didn't matter if you were 5 or 18, he expected you to toe the line, right?
Yeah.
And I would say, to the swim moms, including my children's mother, listen, man, this is the way this guy operates. And he's looking at building these kids into strong adults and independent thinking adults, not just being great swimmers. There's more to this than what you're observing. So when he's yelling and the windows are shaking, I'm good with that, because my kids still talk to him today, and they're in college. They still contact him because they knew that he was doing that out of love, right? That's just the way he showed his love was, and that's just the way it was. And so everybody has different ways of showing love, but that's what it is all about, is as long as we are in the right place with our heart, generally we're going to end up doing the right thing.
Yeah. If it comes from love, it'll be much better guided than just harshness for the sake of being hard. Look, my big brother beat me physically, but he loved me, and I knew he loved me. I came from a loving family, but I wasn't going to let anybody else beat on me because I was maxed out. My bandwidth, I'd had enough of that. So that's where my physical toughness came from, and that branched out into everything else that I did. So I give my big brother a lot of credit for that. But it was in love. I mean, he wasn't harming, he wasn't injuring me, but he made sure I was tired of being beaten on, and that served me very, very well. So that's another example of it being in love. And just the same reason BUD/S is hard. SEAL training, it's to prepare you to survive and win the fight and come back home. And it's the same way in MMA or UFC, anything else. If you really want to win on game day, you'll do the preparation, and the preparation needs to be hard.
Yes. 100%. And that's life, right?
Yeah, it's a type of love. Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Right on.
So, Pat, one of the things that sitting here listening to you talk and watching MMA, I actually was a big follower of MMA back in the early days when you were fighting, and I really enjoyed it. But the one thing that I really recognized in your discipline was patience. And so, as a father and as a coach, how does that translate today in what you're teaching? How important is patience with our kids and with the people that you're training and teaching?
Well, I think more than anything else, we have a world of systems, right? We have a world of, the way everyone's been educated, whether it be about health, about, history, about money, about all these different things. They're all systems that have been built. And so I've learned that you can't fire hose someone into changing their ways or changing their perspective. I can only plant seeds. And that's the same thing with, why. I don't want to be the what guy. So if you're watching fights on TV, for instance, for us, and I'm doing the replay call and I say, hey, you can see here Jim Jones throwing a right hand. Well, yeah, they can see that on TV. Why did the right hand land? And why did the other guy get hit? What did he do wrong? And so it's always, you have to tell people why they want to do things maybe a little bit differently. And this is what's going to happen because of it. And that's the main thing, is why. You just have to explain why and how their lives can change for the better. That's really what it comes down to.
Outstanding. Thank you, Pat. And folks, stand by. We will be right back on the other side of this quick break. Welcome back to Defending Our Children, everyone. We are on with UFC Hall of Famer Pat Miletich. We're talking about the children, how they're in harm's way, what we can do about it, and all the things that Pat has experienced and learned. He's talking about systems. We've got systems for everything in this country, and we can apply all that to defending our children where we can identify how to do so. So Pat's onto some great things. Pat, what else do you think about this, brother?
Well, as far as when in reference to children, I give speeches to a lot of different groups, whether it's agriculture people, whether it's health-minded people, whether it's college-age kids, high school-age kids, and middle school-age kids. And I, especially with the kids, but everybody, I try to I try to implement and explain generally why environmentally everyone is sick, right? And with the increase in environmental chemicals and then other chemicals that end up in our bodies through different means than just ingesting, breathing, or drinking, whatever it is we're putting in our bodies, that there are means to remove those things from your cells and fixing your gut biome, right? So if we can remove the synthetic chemicals and heavy metals from our cells and fix our gut biome, we can change our perspective. And I tell kids a lot of times, look, next time you're at the grocery store, just pause for a second and look around the grocery store at all the deformities you see around you, whether it's mental unawareness, whether it's mental illness, whether it's physical deformities, hormonal dysfunction, where men don't look like men anymore. All these types of things, as far as not being strong, not being muscular, not all those things that are involved in the differences between us. And if you don't want to end up like that and being sick and deformed, because most people are not born deformed, Craig, they acquire the deformities, structural deformities, internal organ deformities, and dysfunction and cellular and mitochondrial dysfunction through the accumulation of environmental toxins, heavy metals, synthetic chemicals, all these things that pollute your cells. Your cells will not release them because they're not water soluble. So then you have to be armed with the knowledge of what to put in your body that can go into your cell, bond with hydrogen and raise oxygen levels. I have to have oxygen to live. The more oxygen, the better in my cells. Feed the mitochondria, which is the furnace of the cell. I have to have cellular energy. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing that those antioxidants, those substances will do is bond with heavy metals and synthetic chemicals. Then your cell looks at the organic and says, that's water soluble. I can release that. Then it'll pull, or what we call chelate toxins, out of your cells. And once we do that sort of thing and fix our gut biome, the correct microorganisms in your digestive system, all of a sudden the symptoms of whatever it is they tell you you have tend to diminish quite a bit or even completely go away. So once we're armed with that knowledge, we can protect ourselves from ending up physically handicapped, hormonally destroyed, mentally ill, all these different things. And so if people would just arm themselves with what I call the truth, we're gonna help a lot of people. And so I try to get that information across to everyone, but children are super important because they're the future.
Well, I mean, just look at all the things in addition to your grocery store list of what to look for. Look at how many of our products are banned in Europe because they are in fact toxic. Why, right. Oh, why are they on our shelves?
Right.
I've learned so much. You and I have a mutual friend who is very, very knowledgeable on all of this. And I appreciate him so much, man. And he was telling me the other day, even all of the almonds there's a law in California that the almonds that are shipped out of that state are nuked. They're superheated to the point to where the oil inside is rancid and the nutritional value is zero. In fact, the product is toxic before they can leave the state. Who signs off on this? And where's the oversight, the checks and balances on the food that we're putting in our bodies? If you love people, you want them empowered with knowledge. Knowledge is power. Not only is the food toxic, but the knowledge of it is being censored and suppressed. What do you make of all this?
Well, the systems have been put in place by very powerful companies. So we just, as when we use common sense and we say to ourselves, okay, number one, fighters were coming to me years ago, 20, 25 years ago from all over the world, and they'd go to the grocery store to get their groceries because they were going to train with me for 4, 6, 8 weeks for a fight. And they'd come back from the grocery store and go, now we know why this is a quarter of a century ago, Craig. Now we know why Americans are obese and disease-ridden. Your entire grocery store is full of nothing but poison. You guys are literally deliberately being poisoned. And whether it's for financial gain, whatever it is, it doesn't matter the reason. People have to arm themselves with that. So when we look at people who are educated in agronomy at the agriculture schools or in medical school, or everything is chemical based. The solutions are all chemical based. So if we look at the soil, when you grow with petroleum-based synthetic fertilizer, well, the plant is very sick. So you have to sterilize the soil. Otherwise, nature is going to kill those plants. So you have to use then pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides to stop nature from killing very sick, very ill plants. And that's the stuff that we're then putting in our cows, our pigs, our chickens, all of that, when they could grow biologically with true biological growing, zero chemicals whatsoever, have massive, yields, and at the same time save a couple $100 per acre on their inputs. And, think about a 10,000 acre farm. That's $2 million saved at planting time. And they can have a bigger yield or as big a yield and heal their soil at the same time. And so just those types of things that we try to talk about. And I steer people towards the ag experts that I'm friends with if they want answers, or homeopathic doctors if they want those. But in generality, through common sense and a little bit of research on our own, we can become our own doctors.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just shows what a hostile environment our children are growing up in. How are they going to get the nutrition that they need to develop the healthy immune system and mind that's going to help them navigate these crazy times? I know I've heard stories of little old ladies getting SWAT team raided over, her having her own little blueberry patch in her backyard, organic blueberries. And I know a guy from a certain intelligence agency that has to get raw milk from his neighbor who's a farmer, and he has to run it like a covert operation because, boy, the federal government would bring down the full force and weight of their power on him for drinking milk that's very healthy and natural and organic. But they don't have that same energy for those that are trafficking children into the United States. It's just strange, the days that we're in.
Well, and the simple thing is, take pasteurized milk for example. You take microorganism rich, nutrient rich milk, fresh from a cow that's a grass fed, no chemicals, no grain fed. That milk is going to be really pure. It's going to be good for your digestive system. The nutrients in it are going to go into your cells. But then they cook it at a certain degree to kill all the microorganisms and destroy it. And then they add probiotics, which are lab created, microorganisms, or then synthesized vitamins and all the garbage that is really, really bad for your body. And then they put that on the shelves, right?
And they call it fortified.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is people need to know the difference. When you go to even a health food store, pay attention to if it's 100% organic or biologically created. So I don't want minerals from rocks. I want minerals from plants that have pulled the minerals up out of the ground and bonded them with a carbon molecule. That's when they become organic. That's when my cell can use that and generate energy and all of that. If I put synthesized into my body, that's actually damaging my cellular function.
I hear you. Hey, let's wrap real quick. We'll do another half of our show with you, Pat. But folks, let Pat tell you how to find him and support what he does, and then we'll roll on into the other half of the show.
Yeah, sure. So people can, if they want to explore the products, they can go to chemicalfreebody.com and use promo code SOS because there's an SOS going out for Americans' health right now. So chemicalfreebody.com and use SOS as your promo code.
There you go. Thank you, Pat. And folks, stay tuned for the other half of our show. We're going to unpack a fight that Pat's got coming up, and you're not going to want to miss that discussion. But for now, join us next time on Defending Our Children. Welcome, everybody, to Defending Our Children. We have with us today a friend, somebody that I really appreciate. His name is Pat Miletich. He is a UFC champion and Hall of Famer, commentator, and much, much more. Pat, thank you for coming on and sharing so much with us as you have. Folks, this is the second half of our show with him, but he's already covered a lot of valuable content. So if you haven't caught the first half, I urge you to go back and watch that as well. Pat, thank you for coming back onto the show. And I say, if you want to, let's unpack and talk a little bit about a situation you've got where there's a fight coming up, and you're not 18 years old anymore, but you're not done yet. So tell us all about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, number one, I try to reiterate with people and get across to people that I have no desire to hurt anyone ever again. I got all of that out of my systems in my system in my 20s and 30s. Won the world title, reached all my goals as an athlete, as a coach, and honestly, as a broadcaster, So it's not that I don't have the desire to get in and fight. I'm in a different kind of fight now, so, but the way things transpired between myself and my opponent, it was very strange. He and I got along very well. He even asked me to corner him against CM Punk, the famous WWE wrestler, when they fought each other. And it was a real fight in the UFC in the United Center in Chicago, a packed United Center, and the entire building was there to see CM Punk, not the guy that I was cornering. The guy that I was cornering won the fight. And from there forward, things started to devolve in this country with all the stuff, the lockdowns, the cities being lit on fire, all the chaos that was ensuing. And then he started saying a lot of things that didn't make sense to me. It wasn't in his nature, saying a lot of negative things about people, of different races, right? A lot of racist terminology, things like that. And I thought, dude, no matter how you look at it, lighting other people's businesses on fire this is not the way to go about this. I understand the frustration, with law enforcement or however you feel. Look, we've all had this emotional programming that's been taking place, and we need to see through the smoke screens. But eventually it got to the point where I just said, you know what, I'm just going to unfriend him on social media, and I don't want to see this stuff anymore. And then he took that as like I was waging war on him or whatever. So what he did is he wrote a false article about me when I was in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. And what I observed there, we didn't do anything illegal. We stayed down away from the Capitol, all that stuff. We weren't up there, any of that. But he wrote the headline and pictures with me there were people from all over asking for pictures of me. I don't do background checks on people when I do pictures. I've never done that. I don't know who I'm taking pictures with, pretty much ever. And so he posted some pictures of me in Washington, D.C. and said, Pat Miletich supports domestic terrorism and white supremacy, which everybody who knows me knows that that's absolutely not the truth. I've always done my best to help people no matter what their background, skin color, religion, anything like that. Well, that resulted in the network folks being under a lot of pressure who I did broadcasting for. And ultimately it led to me being unemployed, right? So he was waging financial warfare on me with lies. And so I said, now we've got a problem. Now you're affecting my children. Okay. Right. It's one thing to go after me. It's another thing to affect my children. Now you've got a problem. Right. And he basically said, because he's 20 years younger than me, that he's going to walk the dog with me and all this other stuff. So we have figured out a way to make that happen. I'm going to give him the opportunity. I'm going to hand him the leash and see if he can walk this dog. And October 14th, we're going to fight in full MMA rules in Davenport, Iowa. It'll be live on pay-per-view on cagedaggression.tv. People can go there and tune in. And I'm doing this because I felt the pain of the people who had to make a decision whether to serve their country or have the treatment. People that had to lose their businesses because of the lockdowns, people that lost their jobs, all those professionals out there, medical professionals or whoever it was, had to make that decision between feeding their children and taking an experimental treatment. And so for me, what I've viewed happen to this nation, the combination of everything being put together and people losing their homes, their businesses, their livelihoods, the explosion in suicides and illnesses and all kinds of stuff that's gone on has all been based on lies, pretty much. It's all been based on lies in my mind, in my personal opinion. And I've got a pretty good perspective on things, having researched health for 35 years and how to build superhumans. I know what it takes. And so I don't even want to hurt another human being in my life. But Mr. Jackson has signed up for this, and he's waged a war on me. He declared war on me. And so I'm going to oblige him on October 14th.
I don't know about everybody else, but I know I'm going to be there. I'm going to be tuned into this thing because it sounds intense. It sounds very, very interesting. So, man, knowing you, it seems like such a silly attack on you. And man, I hope you get an overwhelming success out of this response, and that it serves you and your family well, and others who are watching on. I really do.
Yeah, and I want people to understand that we have to stop falling for the emotional programming that's going on. Right? Yeah. We just have to stop. We have to take a step back and understand that your neighbor, no matter their background, is not your enemy. period.
Yeah.
They're not your enemy. They are your friend. We are all in this together. You know, the environmental toxins, for instance.
Yeah.
Uh, Everyone getting cancer, you know, the massive amounts explosion in cancer and autoimmune diseases and diabetes and all the things that are happening. It's not happening to people on the left or the right. It's happening to everyone,
Yeah.
right? So we all have to just take a step back and understand that there are solutions to all of this, and that we can solve problems. We can solve these problems through just a little bit of communication and understanding that there's a lot of people out there that have answers. And if we just listen, we can fix things.
Well, one thing is we cannot unite and solve problems when we are scattered and pitted against each other every which way there is. And there's a concerted effort to do that, to divide us and scatter us, because divided we fall. People need to realize that's an act of hostility. That's a very, very ugly and hostile act. That's an act of war in itself, is to divide a nation and to diminish its communication. In wartime, we always go after the enemy's communications first, destroy their communications so they cannot coordinate. Well, what do we see when we share factual truth on any social media platforms now? It gets censored, man. And now in the court of law and all the doctors that are coming out, there's situation after situation over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. We have been lied to so extensively. And I, for one, whenever I've posted the factual evidence, censored, deleted, banned, and now the truth is all coming out. It's like, we're starting to see now the deliberate, concerted effort to squash the truth. We need to start asking ourselves and each other, what's that really all about, folks? And what do we need to do as a citizenry against it to overcome this so that we can look after our own best interests again?
Yeah, and that's, one of my podcasts, the Conspiracy Farm. We've been covering this stuff for many years, many years, and saw this stuff all coming, and even told people that it was going to start in the spring of 2020. And that was 14, 15 months before it started. We knew what was coming, and we knew all of this was going to happen. So ultimately, we have got to see the truth. No matter how ugly the truth is for us, we have to see it. We have to accept it. And that's why we're starting the Got Truth Tour. We're going to start doing cities around the country. We'll probably start that in the spring of next year. And we're going to be going to LA, Las Vegas, Phoenix, all those different places. And I would hope that you would love to be one of our guests on a live studio show or an on-stage show where we're not only talking about the truth, but then answering the audience's questions. And that's what it's all about, is the Got Truth Tour. And again, no matter how ugly the truth is, we have to face it, and we have to deal with it and recognize the answers to, the problems we're faced with today.
Yeah, that's where the moral courage comes in, to face the truth and speak it. So yeah, I'll be there for you in Phoenix at least, and be happy to come online with you as well. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Defending Our Children. We are on with Pat Miletich. Man, this is a good conversation. I'm appreciating Pat's input. We talked a little bit about a mutual friend of ours, Tim James, who runs chemicalfreebody.com. We've both learned a lot from him. You'll listen to Pat rattle off so much knowledge about health and what's needed. And I encourage you to listen to Pat, listen to his words. I think we've both learned a lot from Tim James as well. It's something that I encourage everybody to tune into, because again, if you love people, you want them empowered, you want them healthy, you want them protected, right? And so that's why I share that with you. So I appreciate your knowledge on that, Patrick, because man, I've been inoculated and shot up with so many things over the years in the military. I've traveled to 60 countries around the world, and I've been subjected to all kinds of things, and my body and health has been broken down, and I'm desperately trying now to heal and recover. And there's a lot to that process. So I appreciate learning a lot from guys like you and Tim.
Yeah, no. And that's the thing, is that's why I'm really heavy into helping farm families and veterans and active military, because you guys have been exposed to so many pollutants, so many toxins and heavy metals and all that stuff, that we have to be able to pull that stuff out of the body to regain, the health that you guys once had. That's super important. So, and I use myself as an example. People go, yeah, but you're unique. You've always been an athlete. You've always been this. And what they don't understand is that I've had so many injuries. I've had every joint on my body has been severely injured numerous times. I've had spinal injuries where I was paralyzed twice from the neck down for, about an hour each time. Had one of my discs explode into my spinal cord and almost completely sever it. But I've rebuilt myself without surgeries. I've never been cut on one time. And this is the understanding that the power that made the body can heal the body. If we only put the concentrated nutrients that were created, well, by our God, by whoever you believe that is, from the earth, and put that stuff in our body, and it'll allow the body to regenerate itself. Craig, I don't really have pain. I'm in my 50s, mid 50s, and I've been through the equivalent of 10,000 car wrecks, probably the same as you. But I don't have any pain. I don't suffer from arthritis. I don't suffer from the things that the average American suffers from, because I have continually put this stuff into my body to remove the toxins that are the root cause of inflammation to begin with, right?
Nice.
So when you hear a guy like Dr. Zach Bush talk, who's a world-renowned chemo research scientist, who finally realized, wait a minute, inflammation is the source of all disease, right? It just manifests in different ways. The toxins in your body could manifest in ways of arthritis. Well, in my body, it manifests in ways of respiratory disease or digestive issues or whatever it is. The source of all of that is the impurities that are trapped in our cells and in our gut and everything else. Remove those sources that cause the inflammation, the oxidative stress to the body, and all of a sudden things start to turn around. Generally, is what we've observed, and that's the main thing that I try to get across to people. That if my theory, we'll just call it a theory, that impurities in our environment are the drivers of disease and sickness in certainly Americans. Well, why would I want to go to a so-called expert and have him write a piece of paper for me to go get a prescription for more synthetic chemicals? How is that a solution? It's just not a solution, right? It's a Band-Aid. Yeah. And so I just want people to be able to realize, and once we can help people educate themselves to gain their health back, now they've freed themselves. And now they're aware, physically, mentally, and hormonally, of the world around them. Because otherwise everything's very clouded, right? They have a tough time understanding anything beyond that until their health is returned.
Pat, one of the observations that I've made in my background, Craig and I grew up together, and I went and played ball in college. And so my background took me into banking. And in the world I lived in, reoccurring revenue was the best business model in economics. And if you look at big pharma now, what are they doing? They're creating reoccurring revenue. Everybody now, if you look around, everybody is on some sort of medication. It keeps growing. In the
70%, yeah, 70% of Americans are on at least one product. About roughly, I believe, 50% of Americans are on 4 or more, which is absurd to me. And I'll just give you an example of a conversation I had with a friend of mine who's a veteran, and he had gone to the doctor, and the doctor had written him a prescription for a bunch of different stuff. And I said, well, we probably maybe could work on helping you through, natural means and helping you feel a lot better. Do you want to feel better? Yes, I want to feel better. Okay, well, and then he said, listen, I'll effing listen to you when you're a doctor. And I said, okay, fair enough. I said, so next time you visit your doctor, ask him what his 4-point, 6-point, 10-point plan is to get you off all the chemicals he just put you on. Because they're from chemical companies, right? These are not health companies. These are chemical companies. So ask him what his 4-point plan is to get you off of those, and then let me know. And he just looked at me, and I said, I'll talk to you later. But I wanted to plant that seed. And then a couple of days later, he gave me a call, and he said, hey, you got time to sit down maybe over a cup of coffee? I want to ask you a few more questions about what you're talking about. And that's all I can do, right? Is leave them with a seed and let it grow and fester a little bit. And then inquisitively, he reached back out. And that's a lot of the stuff that I do, is just plant a seed and then walk away, and that's all I can do. And those types of people, once they start to research on their own and figure out the answers and then start to feel better, then they're ready to hold deeper conversations, right? About really everything else that we're talking about, and that's the same thing with the agriculture folks. You know, everybody's been programmed to put these chemicals into their fields, and they're not thinking about that. Just this simple theory that I've posed to many agriculture experts, and a lot of them agree with me, that when we kill the soil with chemicals, you got to understand that in the 1960s, there was over a ton of living microorganisms in 1 acre of soil. That same section of soil has less than 100 pounds now, and most of it's genetically modified. So it's not even real organisms in the soil. So the soil is dead. Well, once the soil is dead, it no longer holds the right amount of water, for instance. So if soil doesn't hold water anymore and it just runs off, well, it's going into creeks, streams, into rivers, and away from that geographical area. Well, then the proper evaporation rates are not happening. And now we're not getting proper rainfall. What are we observing now in America around the Midwest? Massive droughts. North Dakota, in the region that I'm in here, had 0.05 inches of rain in the month of July. A half an inch for an entire month. And June wasn't a whole lot better. And the same thing's happening in Iowa and many other places around the country right now. Montana's suffering from severe drought. So we have to wake up, bring the soil back to life so that it will hold moisture and we can have the rains come back. I mean, right now with the chemicals that we're using for the past 40, 50 years in agriculture on our lawns, we're all guilty of it. All guilty of it. Golf courses, all of it is making it so we are literally creating deserts. We're turning the Midwest of the United States into a desert.
Well, I love the points that you're bringing. One of them that you zoomed right over because it's old hat to you, but it's so valuable to everybody else. I want to unpack that a little bit further. I think everybody needs to be asking their doctor, Doc, what is your plan to wean me off of all of these chemicals, all of these medicines, whether it's 1 or 100? What is your plan, Doc, to wean me off of this? Because that's probably going to be a conflict of interest for him because that's where his big money's come in. They get kickbacks for this. These are golf course meetings. And I've known big pharmaceutical reps that have made $500,000 a year. That was 20 years ago. $500,000 a year for playing golf with doctors, making sure that they knew how much kickback they could get for prescribing more of their big pharma chemicals to their patients.
And a lot of that now is speaking engagement money and things like that, right? So they've changed the way the payments are made.
Yeah. Okay, so we got to cut to a quick break, but we will be right back with one final segment with Pat Miletich. Stand by. Welcome back to Defending Our Children, everyone. We are on with UFC fighter, champion, and Hall of Famer Pat Miletich. And Pat's a tough guy. He's a hard guy. He's a good fighter. I'll grant you that. I want to challenge him on something. He said he doesn't want to hurt anybody. Don't let him tell you that, folks. He hurts my feelings all the time. And he just does. Sometimes he just calls me up to just beat on me and then hangs up. And, you know, I get hurt and I cry a lot. And so, Pat, I just want to call you out, man. I want to throw down the gauntlet and challenge you to a duel. And this is a duel that I'm going to bring my mother's Texican cornbread recipe, and you bring whatever weak sauce you think you can to match that. But sir, you've been undone. When you taste this, you're going to be like, so man, I got nothing. Or you could try, but I think that book's already been written. What do you say about this?
I can make some mean chili, buddy, with a lot of wild game, and I make a pretty wicked wild game chili. So we'll definitely go head to head on that one.
Well, okay. You may have just outdone me because you've not only accepted my challenge, but instead of coming up with some weak cornbread recipe, you came out with something that would augment my cornbread recipe as a win-win.
The chili goes on the cornbread.
I feel outclassed.
I feel hungry.
It's wild game. It's non-GMO wild game. You just got to make non-GMO cornbread, bro.
I want to be at that meeting. I want to be at that barbecue. We're going to have to make this happen. Maybe we'll do that in Phoenix when you come to town there.
I love it.
Okay. Well, look, good fun. You got to joust a little bit and keep it light. We share a lot of hard topics on this show, but Pat's a good guy, so I wanted to ruffle his feathers for a minute. So I like the unity. You and I are both about, we love our country, man. We love our people. And that's what the country is to the people and the culture. And the unity is something that's been under attack. And I think we got to look at what world, when we're talking about the children, we're raising them. We want them to be healthy. We want them to have the information, but we want them also brought up in a unified nation, not one that's divided and falling. What else do you see on the unity issue? It's just such an important thing, I think, to finish off the discussion with.
Well, I mean, our kids, our children mimic what we do, right? A lot of that, they look up to us no matter if we're an evil human being or do our best to be saints. It doesn't matter. They're going to emulate what they see, and that's just the way it is. So look, I'm far from perfect. I've made a million mistakes in this life, done a lot of stupid things. My children were made aware that of the mistakes that I've made, they've learned from, of the things that I've done right, they've learned from. And that's, those honest discussions with my kids, the way that they were raised, is they have no problem confronting me. They'll go, Dad, like, do you think this makes sense? And we'll have those types of discussions, the type of discussion about, with my oldest daughter, who's, going to be a senior in college. Years ago, when she was in high school, she was questioning whether God existed. I wasn't trying to browbeat her with anything about, God's existence. I said, just keep asking questions. And the coolest thing was she had left for college her freshman year. And out of the blue, she called me and said, hey, Dad, can you do me a favor? I said, of course. I'm going to send you a link. Can you pay for and order this Bible for me and send it to me? And that, through no force, through no anything, she's able to just come to her own conclusions. And that's what I want, right? I want her to come to her. And after reading the Bible numerous times and everything else, if she comes to a different conclusion on her own, that's up to her. She hasn't so far. But that's what it's all about, is making strong, independent thinking, not groupthink children. We want children to be able to stand up and go, hey, wait a minute. I know all of you are doing this, but I choose not to. And I hope you're okay with that, because I'm going to do it anyway. Right. And that's the type of people we want around us. I've got friends who are not yes men. I've got people who go, dude, get your act together, knock it off. Right. And that's the type of people I want around me. And my kids are that way. And that's, that's super important. I think that those are the type of people you want to surround yourself with. I'm going to wear this hat or this shirt or this new type of jeans because that's what's popular. No, no, I'm going to wear my beat up old tennis shoes, and I'm going to wear these raggedy sweats, and I'm going to get a workout in, and I don't really care how I look.
Well, I think people respect authenticity. And we've taught our children, man, look around, make sure you are aware of what all that's out there. But then once you lock on to the truth, build on it and build on it and build, and don't keep chasing everything. You can make yourself aware of everything that's out there. Like my dad used to say, chew the meat, spit out the bone. Don't be ignorant of what's out there, but don't chase that which you clearly see is not the way.
And when I was really little, I was a lot younger than my three older brothers and my sister. But when I was little, we just didn't have a whole lot of money. So everybody wore wingtips back then, right? This is the 70s, right? And so my brothers had old beat up wingtips, but everybody would wear dress socks with them, brown socks, blue socks, black socks, whatever. Well, we didn't have the money for any of that. It was just a big package of white gym socks. That's all we had, right? And everybody kind of shared socks or whatever it was. And so my brothers would wear wingtips with white socks, just out of not having the money for dress socks.
Yeah.
Well, they started a fad out of not having any money, and all the kids started, because they looked up to my brothers, started wearing white socks with wingtips, and they started a fad, right? So that's reality. That's don't just individuality. Be yourself. Don't be influenced so much by what other people think. Just be yourself and speak your own truth.
Yeah, man, I love that, and I've seen an example of it. And when I got out of the SEAL teams, I finally started getting to race motocross, and I won some championships in Vegas and racked up a bunch of sponsors, and I really had a lot of fun, just childish fun in my 40s, late 30s and 40s, and was just eating up with it, just fun. And some guys were talking about the gear that the guys wear, and like, what gear is the coolest gear? And there was this a discussion about it. One guy goes, I'll tell you what the coolest gear is. Whatever gear, even if it's the most ragged, nasty gear that guy is wearing, who's way out front, that dude that's just shagging, man, he's faster and nobody can catch him. I guarantee you that is the coolest gear. That's what everybody wants to wear. And I'm like, wow, yeah, you don't have to chase the pack, man. You just have to make your mark and be somebody of substance that people can respect and appreciate, and that'll start to translate and resonate, so that's cool.
So what do you do for your adrenaline nowadays?
Oh man, it's not so much adrenaline, it's just my soul, brother. I have to stand up against the worst harm that I can identify.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's literally supernatural and that it's bigger and much more interesting than I would ever known is what causes me to have my attention. It's fascinating, the fact that there is a massive spiritual conflict going on, and to learn from all the surviving witnesses and survivors of satanic ritual abuse, because they, without saying too much right now, they can see into the spirit realm, at least to some degree, under extreme trauma and torture. And so they see the divine and they see the demonic, so they can tell you all the stories. And we know that from what we're dealing with, but that's a fascinating insider's look. So that's what keeps my attention, not so much adrenaline, but soul fuel, if you will. But Pat, thank you, brother. That's all the time we have. We thank you for coming on. You grant fantastic contributions. Let's let you have the rest of the show to drive people to where to find you and support what you do.
Appreciate it. Yeah, main thing is become your own doctor. Do your own research. We're all intelligent beings. Read about how you can help your own body heal and get the toxins out of your body and start your journey. Go to chemicalfreebody.com and do some research there. And also, people can follow me on Instagram at PJ Miletich. That's a mile and then TICH, PJ Miletich on Instagram. And I have people on all the time, experts, and even people who did their own research and figured out their own health issues. And that's what I want. I want to interact with Americans and people worldwide who figured out how to unlock these things. And then once you experience true health, then you can open yourself up to the spiritual, the mental, all of it, and understand the world a lot better.
All right. I'll buy that. Thank you so much, Pat Miletich. Everybody, we appreciate you joining us, and come back for us next time on Defending Our Children.